So this was me in 2017. One day, I will work in the Valley and give a TEDx talk on my work with the RGV Matters. I'm speaking it into existence. Now, as you can tell, I'm a big believer in speak to existence, but there's two things that you should note about this tweet. The first is that it was a very bold thing for me to say as a sophomore in high school. And the second, perhaps making it more bold, is that I had no real plan of action on how to accomplish this. No clue how an opportunity for a TED Talk would ever come my way. And as you can see, I just said work, so I had no idea what job that was going to be. And this was all I had, a tweet and the vision behind it. But being on this stage today, it seems that was enough. Now, I was born and raised in the Rio Grande Valley, a region located on the Texas-Mexico border. And as an article I read a while back describes it, a place where two languages and two identities merge and are drawn together by a shared culture and history. But as an unaware and slightly self-absorbed sophomore in high school, I did not view my community this way. And I believed there was only one process I was expected to follow: to grow up, to get my degree, and to get out. And this process and the mindset that it came from were deeply rooted in the false perceptions that plagued our community, but most importantly, in the feeling that as a young person, I was powerless to change it. It wasn't until a conversation I had with a very influential educator in my life that I began to realize I did not have to fall into this process or this mindset. But shortly after this revelation, I realized that I hit another roadblock, and that was that there was no other process, no other plan or roadmap to change this narrative or this mindset for myself and for other youth in our communities. Pretty sad. So what I found in this pursuit was that when I led by vision and I threw away all of the steps and requirements behind these goals, I was able to create a space and exist in a space that fostered new voices and visions just like mine. And make no mistake, in pursuit of doing this, I was not trying to create a process or a model or some example for other people to follow. I just wanted to prove to myself that changing this narrative, that helping this community as a young person was possible. That was my vision. And being a youth in this community where my voice seemed to get lost sometimes, spaces like this were necessary. So what does it mean to lead by vision? What exactly is that? To me, it means to pursue our goals free of the limitations placed on us by this need for processes. Now, I'll give you an example. I'd like you all to think of your big vision or your dream. Think about it. Think about it. Manifest it. Okay, so I want you to think of all of the steps that you're taking or that you plan to take in order to make this a reality. Now, what if you had a deadline? What if that deadline was 3 weeks or 5 days? Your process changes, but what doesn't change is the vision behind it. And I think it can be said that these steps and these requirements that we're taking can actually be a barrier rather than a bridge to our end goal. Now, I founded my nonprofit organization, the RGV Matters, in 2017. And despite there being no process, once again, that did not stop me from trying to check off every single invisible box. I tried so hard to seek some sort of validation from the idea that I was doing it the right way, and there was none. And so, naturally, I failed miserably at doing this, and for 2 years, I hesitated with every event and project and opportunity because I wasn't a registered 501c3. I didn't have a cohesive social media or a website or a professional logo, and to me, that meant that my idea just wasn't good enough. And these feelings were only compounded by the adults in my life who didn't understand, who ignored my carefully worded emails, who wouldn't respond to my requests, who said they would love to hear more when I was older or more experienced, or who immediately discounted me for the steps I missed or things I didn't do. And so this put a pause on my passion for both this idea and my community as a whole. And in retrospect, I can't help but think of all of the visions and voices that we shut down in our community when we place process over people. So, what happens when we change this mindset? What is possible? Anything. Anything is possible. When we lead by vision, we put ourselves in a mindset that embraces every possibility. And yes, we stray away from what's been done before and in a scary way what works, but that also means that there's no wrong way. That is the excitement. That is where our vision comes in. Now, the RGV Matters hosted its very first event in 2019, 2 years after we were established. And this event was an entirely youth-led school board forum. Now, keeping in pace with this idea of vision over process, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. This idea came to me one day in government class, and by the next, I had emailed every single candidate with 2 dates that were roughly 2 weeks away without discussing with any venue or sponsor or team as if I had any. They responded, they agreed, and suddenly I was thrown into this whirlwind of planning an event I had never done before and had no idea how to do. But the time came, the 2 weeks were up, and it was youth, running from pageant practice and tutoring and family vacations to tour venues, to help me out with facilities, to negotiate contracts, talk with sponsors, and have a seat at the table. Heck, have the whole table to ourselves and doing it our way. We had over 200 people in attendance, over 1,000 people watching online. We had 3 articles written about this event, and our organization was recognized as a place for youth leadership. I can remember one article beginning, thank you. I can remember one article writing about this event and beginning with saying, 7 candidates answer questions directly from students themselves. And this was probably the least interesting part of that entire article, but to me it was everything. Because it was proof that this student-led organization was capable of doing something at this caliber, was capable of controlling this conversation, and that was the vision. Now, by all means, this was a success in my book. This was a vision made reality, and I was excited. I was energized. This event was the culmination of 2 years of self-doubt, of hard work, of procrastination, honestly, 2 weeks of crazy hard work, but of one moment of saying, I don't need to do this the right way, I need to do it my way. Events, spaces, and essentially organizations like this are what is possible when we place ourselves in a mindset with vision at the forefront. So how do we get to this point? How do we get to this point of leading by vision, but most importantly, how can we inspire others in our lives to do the same? Well, inspiring others to lead by vision first begins with changing the questions that we ask. From how do you plan to do this to how can I support you? When we do this, we share the responsibility. We share this vision of changing our community, of making it better, and it becomes an us problem. Now, when I was 12, I thought I was going to be a genius inventor. And I had ideas for a shower that wrote down all the things you think of while you're in there, and a pillow that works as an alarm clock. And some of these may have been created. Maybe the world's a better place that they haven't been. But I honestly thought that if somebody had just believed in one of these ideas at 12 years old, I would have been a millionaire. Luckily, as a 16-year-old, somebody believed in one of my ideas. It was an idea for a community of empowered youth, learning and growing together. This man was Mr. Juan Ozuna. Yes. Now, I met him when I was a sophomore in his English class, and I can vividly remember him introducing himself and saying, I went to Yale. Now, not obviously, the whole chess thing, but he definitely made it known, that he was really proud of it, and he should have been. And he read the room. He could tell a lot of us were kind of confused, not really having ever met an Ivy League graduate before. And so he followed up with, a lot of people ask me, if you went to Yale, why do you teach at a high school? And the question I have for you all is, why don't you deserve to have a teacher that was educated at Yale? In this very moment, Mr. Ozuna challenged the mindset and the process I had known my entire life. That we live in this community to grow up, to get our degrees, and to get out. He chose this community. He chose to live here, to work here, and essentially to change my life. And in this moment, he inspired me to choose my community too. Now, shortly after this introduction, I told him about my idea for the RGV Matters. And I was young, I was inexperienced, had no plan, and I expected him to treat me that way. But instead of asking the dreaded question of, what's your plan? How are you going to do this? Instead, he asked me, Sydney, how can I support you? And that made all the difference. By the next day, he came to me with grants and programs and organizations that could help make my vision a reality. He shared my vision with everyone who would listen and introduced me to local leaders who could help me further this agenda. He let me use his classroom as a backdrop for my very first interview and even held the camera and helped me record. Mr. Ozuna, through his life and his leadership, is a prime example of what it means to lead by vision, but most importantly, how we can inspire others to do the same. Without educators and community members and people like Mr. Ozuna, I would not be on this stage today. So let us be people who lead by vision without the limitations of processes and build that community of support for others. So to the adults, to the community members and educators and vision believers, I want to emphasize the power that you have and the crucial role you play in the lives of those around you, especially to the youth who look up to you. Showing up to speak to that classroom of 15 young leaders is worth your time. Responding to that carefully crafted and worded email from a youth is worth your time. Being the Mr. Ozuna I had for someone else is worth your time. Being a mentor, an advocate, a believer is worth your time. Because without the people who took the time, who showed up, I would not have been that 16-year-old girl chasing her dreams, and I would not be the 18-year-old girl chasing her dreams right now. Now, to my youth, to my dreamers and visionaries, I want you to know that your vision, without plan or process, is enough, and you are the one that will change your community. Seek out those mentors, those advocates, those believers in your life because they're there and they want to support you. They want to be a part of your community. When we lead by vision, placing less emphasis on the requirements behind our goals, but instead focusing on embracing every possibility, when we build that community of support for the leaders in our lives, we create a space for youth like me, for dreamers like you, and for visionaries like us. Thank you.